Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we are going back again to Star Wars Bounty Hunter. You're probably looking at this video going, wait, what? Another version? A kind of remastered version? What's going on here, Maddie? So let's break it down. You had the original version in 2002, like on PlayStation 2. It was there. It was beautiful. We actually did a full-on retrospective of this game within the first year of the channel's life because I love it so much. Okay, cool. Then you get the re-release of Star Wars Bounty Hunter from Aspyr, and this was during an ongoing effort to modernize and preserve all of the old Star Wars games from the early 2000s. So we have games like Star Wars Racer available on like PlayStation 4, you have Republic Commando on Switch, you have KOTOR 1 and 2 on Switch, and so on and so forth. Okay, great. So we have Bounty Hunter preserved, but then a lot of people were confused when out of nowhere, Aspyr Media, who was originally responsible for the KOTOR remake, booted off that project, but also responsible for, earlier this year, Battlefront Classic Collection announced another Star Wars port, and again, it was Star Wars Bounty Hunter. This one's coming in at $20, and it does bring a lot of brand new bells and whistles, controls-wise, camera-wise, mechanics-wise. There's actually a lot to sink our teeth into here, so the question is this now the definitive version of Star Wars Bounty Hunter? Is this the one that you need to own? And also, we gotta be frank, did Aspyr mess this one up as well like they did with Bounty Hunter, where a lot of confidence in them is depleting? We're going to talk about all of that today. I hope you're all doing fantastic. And before we get into anything else, a quick word from today's sponsor. Have you heard that the flavored air category is quickly becoming the leading alternative to vaping and smoking? It's a whole new movement that leads to better habits, led by the sponsor of today's video, Fume. It's an award-winning flavored air device that draws flavor into your mouth and fills the void, ditching a bad habit that can leave, but you still have something to reach for. Now, Fume isn't a vape. There's no vapor, no nicotine, non-toxic flavors, no batteries, but it looks awesome. You can fidget with it. It comes with a Fume base that you can actually twirl around and post it up whenever you want. I love this thing, but it's also the flavors it comes with. There's black licorice, there's crisp mint, there's sparkling grapefruit, maple pepper is a really interesting one, cinnamon hearts, orange vanilla, spearmint, but my favorite is raspberry. All you do is pop these cores out, pop them into your Fume, and that's all there is to it. It calms anxiety with magnets, snaps, and clicks. I fidget with mine a ton. I have for years, as I've been a partner of Fume for a long while. So what are you waiting for? Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you could be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code RETROREBOUND to get your free Fume base when you order the Journey Pack. It's an all-new magnetic stand for your Fume device. Head to tryfume.com, that's tryfum.com, and use code RETROREBOUND or scan the QR code on screen to get your free Fume base when you order your Journey Pack today. Okay, so let's get into the thick of it. What's new in this version of Star Wars Bounty Hunter? The main thing I want to talk about is controls. Now, for longtime Retro Rebound viewers, you'll know that I said, word for word, bar for bar, that Star Wars Bounty Hunter was the very beginning of me getting carpal tunnel syndrome. For those who have never played Star Wars Bounty Hunter, the reason was you didn't hold a button or a trigger to shoot enemies with your two blaster pistols. You had to mash the square button. Now, what was kind of satisfying about it is you could really lay on the heat if you wanted to, if you were mashing square. But doing that for hours and hours and hours on end, even as a kid, I would play this game in bursts because my arm would start to ache. And it didn't get better when I was an adult. So I really had trouble recommending Star Wars Bounty Hunter from like a physical perspective. It's like this game has a lot going for it, but you gotta mash the square button constantly. The camera's not that good. Yeah, the animations are beautiful. Having Tamora Morrison here as the voice actor for Jango Fett again is great, and some of his backstory before the movie is great. Like, there's so much to love about this game, but the gameplay experience, even if I could tolerate it at times, made it really tough to recommend. So when you fire things up, you can go right to the control scheme, and you'll see right there in front of you, there's a legacy version, so if you want to play it the old way, you can. There is also a modern control scheme, and it is beautiful. Hold the right trigger, and guess what? Pew, 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 pew. That's right. You don't gotta press it any other time other than holding it down. For someone who has grown up with this game, this is how it should have been. It's beautiful. Instead of pressing, in the case of PS2, R1 to lock on, you can just click R3. The camera swivels and moves much better. It's no longer inverted now. It's much closer and centered around the actual character at the center of the screen rather than something kind of floating above him. Like the camera would always swing kind of wide like this rather than around Jango Fett himself. So these immediate bells and whistles add so much to the game for those who are returning. And for those who are new to this game, it should feel right at home, as it should have all those years ago, but didn't quite hit that mark because, as I've talked about a lot on videos on Retro Rebound, still figuring out third-person controls at this point. Everything that seems really obvious isn't. You can hold L2, and you can aim in with your blaster pistols, and so there's a lot of quality of life improvements on controls alone, which I think, frankly, make it worth the price of admission alone. There is an adaptive triggers feature, according to Aspire, on the PlayStation blog. When I was testing this, I never felt any sort of resistance depending on what weapons or gadgets I was using. So I don't know if that was like a lie or something, but it was something I was looking for, and I never experienced that on the gameplay side of things. There's a lot I do love about this that I'll get into, but one thing I want to make sure I have here in the front of the video is audio. The audio mixing in this version, I will say, is kind of botched. Now, what they did here is what you'd expect from a modern game. Like when you're getting a call on your intercom, you're going to get the audio coming out of your controller. But this game, when it's in gameplay versus when you are in cinematics, the volume mixing is just wildly off. Like the gameplay is so quiet that I remember when I first put it on my TV cranking it up, and then I got to a cutscene and it was like blowing out my eardrums. It was a completely different level of audio. So just keep that in mind, that this game, I would say, when you're in the gameplay side of things, is very quiet, especially when you're getting messages on like the intercom. It's way too quiet. You can barely hear anyone calling in on you, even when it's coming out of your controller. There are audio settings and sound settings for you to adjust and increase how loud these get, but even then, I didn't think it was that much. This is something that you should be aware of going in that it's not the perfect port and remixing of Bounty Hunter. One great quality of life enhancement they did add to this version, though, is when you're playing Star Wars Bounty Hunter, you can scan targets all throughout the environment, and you'll be able to find out who's a bounty target. This is basically your collectible in the game. I mean, there are actually legitimate collectibles you can find in the levels, but these are really the main thing you're seeking out beyond getting to the end of the story mission. Who are your bounty targets? And there's no real visual indicator outside of putting on that helmet and looking around and seeing if there's a bounty that you can mark. So what originally you had to do on PS2 was tab through all your equipment with the circle button, get to your helmet, aim in, find the target, and the worst thing about it was that you would have to do this in combat. So you would be getting lit up as you're trying to just like look around and see if there's any bounty targets. Why would you do this? Again, it was the main collectible in the game. So two things they did here to make this way better. Not perfect, I'll get into why, but way better. Pressing the triangle button just immediately swaps you to your scanner. So when you have your guns out, you can just press triangle, boom, to the scanner, open it up, and look around. Second best thing about this is that it goes into slow motion. So when you're in the PS2 version and you're looking around, it is normal game speed. But in the newest version, it slows things down. This allows you to actually pause, scan the environment. I was actually going full Neo from the Matrix, just getting out of the way of some laser blasts. You know, why not, right? It's pretty cool. But you actually were able to scan everyone in the environment. Okay, there are bounties here. Okay, there's no bounties here. And then just get back to work. You still had to swap back to your pistols or whatever weapon you wanted to end up using at that point in time. So there was still a little bit of tabbing through. It wasn't perfectly smooth, but much better in getting to that gameplay flow that defines Bounty Hunter and making it as smooth as possible. It's not perfect. It does result in, now that you're not mashing square, you're just holding right trigger as Jango Fett goes to work, because the lock-on camera, it results in just scanning everyone and then going back into the pistols. And sometimes that becomes so tedious that you may not want to stop and scan. You may just want to play through the game. I would totally understand that. I have those moments with this game. So again, not perfect, but almost there. They have also added, as expected, a brand new trophy and achievement list. I did not get to preview the whole thing because for those who don't know, you're reviewing a game before launch. The trophy list is offline until the game is out, so there's no leaks for the game. But what I'll say is, after Chapter 1, I got at least 10 trophies, and I was at 23% completion. I don't know if that indicates that the full Platinum trophy will be super easy, but I was popping them left and right, and a lot of these trophies were brand new and very simple, like punching someone in the face or falling to my death pop 2 trophies in the end of the first chapter. Like, there was just so many ridiculous trophies popping everywhere. So yeah, if you love this game and you want to get more trophies / achievements for it, you can go ahead and do so now with a brand new list, which I know speaks to a lot of people. Another thing they added is a flashlight. I can see why this was added, because when you're playing the PS2 version behind me, that game does get absurdly dark on a CRT. However, because one of the adjustments they made was visual, so the lighting's been improved, the texture quality has naturally been improved, you don't really need this flashlight ever. Like, there was not a single moment in the game as I was playing it through again that was like, oh yeah, I could use the flashlight here. So it's there almost to effectively say like, hey, it's here again. If the game was in its original lighting state, then yeah, I think maybe this would have had a purpose, a use. But where it stands now, it's completely useless. Now, the jury is still out for the audience on if they think the original looked better when it was much deeper, darker, versus this being much more well lit. I prefer the more well lit version, but I get why some people would want it kind of darker, more crunchy, more gritty, and being able to use that flashlight as well. But for me, I just like being able to see everything on screen, so it works for me, especially with the improved colors. Now, visually, while it does look good, I will say the animations have always been great in Star Wars Bounty Hunter, so with that uptick in the visuals, plus the better animations, you got something here that looks surprisingly modern at times. Again, I always said in our original retrospective of Bounty Hunter that the animation quality was way ahead of its time for this game. So now when you're locked on, you're side flipping, back flipping, dodge rolling, like, it just feels so much better, especially with the improved camera. Dodge rolling is a much more useful mechanic in this game. So I think just you get the style points plus the actual usability, the functionality of these mechanics are much, much better. They've also attached the health bar to the light bar on PS5. So let's say you're playing on a DualSense controller, you're going to see like when your health is low, the light's going to emit a little red. So it's been modernized in that way. Another thing they did was adding the ability to unlock Boba Fett if you beat the game. So originally there was a message written in Arabesh that said cash in all bounties to play as Boba Fett. And as they called it out in the PlayStation blog post detailing information on this game, this is like a real low texture message that when you collected all the bounties in Star Wars Bounty Hunter, you didn't unlock Boba Fett. So a lot of people were very upset about that. They've actually righted that wrong. So now when you beat the game, you get to technically play as Boba Fett, which is a really big deal for people. So that's pretty exciting to see. That's there. You don't get any new tools or anything like that, but it was really cool to see that this has been added to the game. So all in all, from my experience with the game, I have to say I'm pretty impressed here. It looks better. It controls a million times better, where I think just that alone is worth the price of admission if you like this game. And also, a lot of underneath the hood changes here that I think are going to resonate with people, but more than anything, it's the modernized controls. The camera was tolerable, I'd say, in the original version. Now it's much better. But just being able to hold the trigger, fire away, swap to my scanner whenever I want, these little things here as a lifelong fan of the game just do so much for me and makes this game go from good to great. From a tough recommendation, depending on whether or not someone's a Star Wars fan, to like, hey, if you want to get this sort of deep cut story on Jango Fett, little bit of his lore, little bit of his backstory leading into the Attack of the Clones movie, like, you can get that here. And especially I can say as a kid growing up with the prequel Star Wars movies, like, I thought Jango Fett looked so cool because of this game. And I remember just growing up being so disappointed with the movie Attack of the Clones for obvious reasons with what happens to Jango Fett and the lack of use with him as a character. I wanted so much more of him, couldn't get enough of him. So this game was like an answer to a prayer for a lot of people. It's just so cool that this exists now, and I think the timing is great, kind of leading into Star Wars Outlaws, this other more gang-focused story game. Like, this is a lot of what Star Wars Bounty Hunter is built off of, not just the backstory of Jango Fett, but just also like working with the criminal underworld in the Star Wars universe, just getting to those deeper cut areas, those darker areas. It's a really refreshing game in a time where everyone had a lightsaber. So even to this day, I think it's pretty great, and so I really enjoyed it. For 20 bucks, I think it's a pretty easy swing if you've never checked it out before, you got a little extra time, or you're a big fan of this game. I will say, though, Aspyr games typically do get physical re-releases, so if you're not really about the digital wave, I think that this game will more than likely get reprinted for physical via, I would imagine, limited run games. We'll see, no guarantee, but it would not surprise me, and so that's one thing that you may want to consider when purchasing this game, just holding out for maybe a potential announcement on that. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, that's everything I have to say about Star Wars Bounty Hunter and its remaster, if you will. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down below. Are you looking to pick this one up? Obviously, I would recommend checking out other reviews to see how other people evaluated the technical state of the game. This is really important because a lot of people reviewed Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection and had a fine time with it, and a lot of people had the most broken time with it. Fortunately, no multiplayer in this, so no worries about servers when it comes to Bounty Hunter, but just something to keep in mind. Check around if you're really interested in this and see how other people are feeling about the way this game came out, because it could vary, especially if I had pretty poor audio mixing. Maybe it was better for someone else, because games are weird like that. So we'll see you in due time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.